Just a reminder before we start the review that we are giving away a free digital copy of a game every month for the subscriber who is the most active and thought-provoking in terms of their comments in the comments section. Puzzle games have been a perfect fit for handhelds ever since Tetris helped the original Game Boy take over the world back in the late 80s. Well, the latest puzzle game has been released for the Nintendo Switch, so can Cubikolor join the greats of the past, or is it destined to fail? Let's find out. Hello everyone, this is Glenn at SwitchUp. Many thanks to the developer for this review copy. The premise of Cubikolor is a simple one. You must move your cube across a 3D plane and reach the goal in order to complete the level. Obviously it's rarely as simple as that though, as there are various obstacles that you will encounter as you go that will halt your progress. The first mechanic introduced is that of coloured blocks. Your cube has a different colour for each of its 6 sides, and touching one of the level blocks that is of a similar colour will make that cube raise up one level. Landing on a block of a different colour to the side of your cube that is touching it will make the block sink down one level. You will need to master this in each level in order to reach higher or lower platforms, and this is essential for reaching the goal on certain levels. Examples of other mechanics that are introduced later include having to touch multiple goal blocks in order to finish a level, or having a set number of moves or a time limit in which to reach the goal. These are introduced fairly gradually, which avoids sudden difficulty spikes and lets you get to grips with one of these before another one is thrown at you. As levels become more complex, you will find situations where there are 2 or 3 steps to completing a level. You may have advanced past the first problem only to find that the next part cannot now be completed as your cube cannot land on a coloured block with the necessary side. This will lead to some levels becoming more about trial and error as you attempt to complete part 1 of the level successfully again, but in a way that sets you up to be able to complete the next part too. It can be frustrating when this happens, leading to you having to restart the stage, but it's also quite rewarding when you do finally crack it. Thankfully, the controls in Cubikolor assist you along the way rather than hinder you. You use the left stick or the D-pad to move your cube, and the right stick moves the camera so that you can see what you are doing. There are options to invert the camera movements or set them to a horizontal or a vertical plane, and the ZL and ZR buttons also zoom the camera in or out. For the most part, the camera is okay, although it can be a little difficult at times to get the angle you need to plan your moves out effectively. Pressing the B button allows you to go back one move, and holding down the X button allows you to restart a level completely. You are graded at the end of a level by how quickly you completed it, how many moves it took you, and how many times you pressed the undo button. Trying to get the gold ranking on each level adds a nice bit of replayability to the game. The gameplay hook is interesting enough to keep you coming back for short bursts, and the controls are perfectly functional with a camera that works with you most of the time. Gameplay receives 16 out of 20 and controls receive 14 out of 20. Graphics are simple and clean. Your current playing grid is central on the screen, set against a background of light colours and 3D shapes floating past in quite a tranquil manner. The use of colours in this game are used more as a gameplay mechanic than for aesthetic purposes, and it's a shame that a little more wasn't done to make the game look more visually pleasing. One nice touch that the game does include is that there are free options in the menu screen to assist people with colour blindness. It's always good to see developers try their best to make games as inclusive as possible. A puzzle game lives and dies by its gameplay and addictive qualities rather than the graphics, but this game would certainly have benefited from a more stylistic graphical choice than the early 90s cyberspace aesthetic that it seems to have gone for. Graphics receive 12 out of 20. The music and sound effects in Cubikolor are extraordinarily basic. There are the traditional mechanical clinks and clanks that you would associate with a game about a big metal cube, and you will hear these as you traverse the menu screen or move your cube around. There is very little variety in terms of musical tracks, with one at the title screen and a second that plays in every level, and both are just a few seconds of music that is then looped. The level music is okay, being fairly relaxing, which is always good in a more cerebral game like this to help relieve frustration, but it does become repetitive extremely quickly. There is an option to turn the music off completely in the menu, which always seems like a bit of an indication that developers knew that their music in the game would begin to grate after a while. The music is unfortunately fairly bland and receives a score of 7 out of 20. Cubikolor costs £7.20 or $8.99. It consists of 150 levels, and the incentive of attempting to receive gold rankings will be enough to keep some returning to the game after completing the levels, although bizarrely it doesn't actually tell you the requirements needed to achieve the gold on each level. The game also tracks your time and the number of moves for each level should you feel like challenging yourself to beat your best score. The levels are split into sets of 10, and 10 levels at a time is probably about enough to complete in one sitting in order to avoid repetition setting in. The asking price is fair and the level of content is decent, and value scores 16 out of 20. To conclude, Cubikolor is a no-frills puzzler with a gameplay hook that is just interesting enough to entice you back for a few more levels every so often. The price is fair for the amount of levels you get, and the difficulty curve is judged pretty well so that frustration doesn't set in too soon. It's quite a slow-paced puzzle game, with moves having to be planned out in advance and level retries being necessary at times. If you are looking for a puzzle game that's a bit more methodical, then this might just suit you, but just be prepared for very basic presentation and repetitive music as part of the deal. Cubikolor receives a SwitchUp score of 65%. Thank you as always for watching. The channel has absolutely exploded recently. We went from I think 2,000 subs to 4,000 in about 2 weeks. So many thanks to all of our new subscribers. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so for all things Switch all the time, and as always, happy gaming.